Okay, thanks, Jake. All right, so today's sessions, what are we going to be doing today? So a couple of things that we're going to be doing in each session. So we're going to be looking at modifying a game using features from another. We're going to look at why that's important, the importance of playtesting the game and acting on feedback to make improvements to your game. And then once we've done all of that, we've had a look, we've made some improvements, we've done some playtesting. Once you've got a complete game, well, then it's time to think about where do you go next? What's the next steps? So we're going to look at some of the roles within the gaming industry. That ties in nicely to what Jake was talking about this morning with your quiz that you did, and also with some of the things that I've been saying to you throughout the week in terms of it not just being directly related to the programming side, the end product of a game, where there's a whole host of jobs and careers available within the industry. And as part of that, I'm going to talk very quickly about 1 Minute Mentors, which is a digital schoolhouse program that they run as part of their offering to get people into the gaming industry, but more on that later. Okay, the sheets that we're going to be using today, if you've been able to get access to them, are the game comparison document, the released game features document, and the playtesting document. But as Jake said earlier, don't worry too much if you haven't got access to those. If you've got a pen and paper, that'll be fine. And obviously, if you're watching again later, you can get those ready for when you want to replay the video. Okay, so I'm going to look very quickly at an existing game. Now, I want you to think back to the Run the Gauntlet game that we created, that we started to create in Constructory. And this is a finished, released version of a game quite similar to that.
Game system operational.
Okay, as you can probably tell, I quite like my retro gaming. So this is another flashback to the 1980s in this particular game. Slightly different. If you remember the other one that I showed you, gave us some instructions first of all. This one just gets straight into the game. And now this isn't a player playing the game. This is like a demo run through that you find in quite a lot of today's games also. Just going through what the game looks like before we even start. Okay, a bit of a credits thing featuring the bells. Now the bells play quite an important role in this particular game. The bells are your collectible item. Okay, so now here we've got some of our game mechanics, the instructions, joystick controlling the hero. Hero wins a bell each time they finish a level. Okay, and then extra incentive there. Five bells give it a super bonus. Okay, so now we're going to go into and see some gameplay. Okay, so very similar to our game that we made in terms of one level being one screen. And very similar game mechanics to an extent. We've got to move over to the the right-hand side of the screen. But now level 2, you can see ramping up that difficulty, getting slightly harder there. So you've got to time that jump properly. And again, collecting that bell, the collectibles. Okay, slightly more difficult. You've got to time those jumps right on this one again. And again, ramping up that difficulty now with some knights there trying to attack us. That game mechanic, avoiding the enemies coming into play again there. Okay, extra difficulties, flying objects and fireballs there coming towards us, and the knights. And then so we've completed 5 levels, so we've now got our super bonus. Okay, again, giving your players incentive to keep playing. Okay, more difficulty, arrows flying in from the opposite direction, and we've just lost a life. Okay, we don't want to take our players right back to the start though, so we'll give them another go at this particular level. And there we go, the players now finished that one. So I'm just going to pause that there. Okay, so you get the idea of this. This is a game that's quite similar to ours in terms of some of the mechanics there that are involved. And there's a lot we could learn from that game. Okay, so we're going to look at the game comparison document. So now we've had a look at a released version of a game that's quite similar to our Run the Gauntlet. We're going to do some analysis to compare it to our prototype game that we made. Okay, so some of the similarities and differences there that I spotted. Similarities, we have got enemies to avoid, and there was some kind of health, loss of life element factor in there as well. Ours, if you remember, our game finished on Wednesday. We'd just completed the health bar, but this particular game had lives lost instead of a health bar. The mechanic, though, is very similar. Okay, some of the differences, well, there's more levels for a start. There were more obstacles. We had a game over new game, although we didn't get to it. When to start a new game, you do it all within the game itself. Okay, you don't have to come out of the game like we had to do. We had to go back to our Construct 3 menu and click on the play button within there. It was all built in within the game. And again, that just makes it a little easier for your players, that you don't want them to have to come out and have to see your code. You want them to, it all needs to be sort of inbuilt. And as the game progressed there, it was quite high difficulty. Okay, so we're also going to look at some of the game's features and what we like about those features. Okay, using the released game features sheet. Okay, so from the game that we've just had a quick look at, some of the things that I liked and what I liked about these features. Okay, background graphics make the game look more interesting. The collectibles, the bells that you had to collect adds extra excitement to the game, more incentive to want to play. Variety of enemies. Again, I don't know what's coming on the next level. I want to see what happens next in the game. Makes me want to play more. Also, you might have noticed in the bottom there was almost like a map that showed us how far we were in the game. So again, those background graphics and the variety of enemies there making me want to play more. I can see how far I've got to go in the game to complete it. So it makes me want to join in, makes me want to play more. I can see how close I am to completion. And again, that game over new game, which makes it easy to start a new game. All right, so the idea now, what will you do with both of these sheets? Once you have some similarities and differences and some features and what you like about these features, you would then go back to your initial game. You would then go to modify your game. Okay, so I'm just going to come out of this now, and I'm going to go into back into Construct 3. Okay, so we've seen that we now, the idea is that this process, as I said to you, it's quite circular. By that I mean it kind of, you go from one process to the next, and then you'd almost come back and start again. So we've been through, we've created a prototype, we've now looked at some existing games, and it now might be a good time to come back to revisit our prototype and maybe make some changes based on what we saw, what we liked about the existing games. So I'm just going to open up my Construct 3. Now I've added some new features in, okay, which I'm going to talk to you about. So I'm just going to show you my game as it exists now. I've remembered this time to share my Run the Gauntlet screen. So at the moment, my game, as it was last time, we lose health, when we hit a monkey ball. But the idea now is, so instead of just saying you win and everything carrying on, I've added a few extra features in. To show that this is the end of the game, I've stopped the monkey balls from moving. And I've also added a highly decorative new game button. So now, instead of having to close that window down and run it again through our Construct 3 window, we can do it all within the game. Okay, so I just now click on new game and away we go again. Okay, that same mechanic works if I was to just get killed, game over, and again we can start a new game. Okay, now these features aren't unique to this type of game. Okay, these are features that you may want in any game, really. This idea of being able to continue without having to drop into the code of your game. Okay, the last thing you want is somebody to be able to have access to your code and to mess around and make changes to your code. In the real world, you'll have spent months, possibly years, and multiple £1 million creating your game. Okay, the last thing you want to do then is to freely give access to your code. So most games will have this mechanic in terms of not having to delve into the code to restart your game. So this is quite a good feature, I think, in general for games to have. So I'm going to talk you through how to put this into your games. Again, don't worry too much about following along with me now. If you want to put this into your game, just revisit later and you'll be able to see it in slower detail. You'll be able to pause as we go along. Okay, so I'm just going to close that window down and I am just going to put back onto our Construct 3 page. Okay, now you can see from mine there's quite a few different things there. In our events that I've added in, but there's only one brand new event from where we were last time. Okay, so what I have done, I've created a new object. I've created the new game button. Okay, so to create a new object, where you have object types, if you just right click there and then you can add a new object type. That will let you choose the object type, and the object type that we want is a sprite. So sprites are just anything that appears in game. So your characters, your buttons that you might have, which is what we're going to create, anything really that's a visible object within the game. Okay, so I'm not going to create a new one because I've already done that. So when you do that, it will just appear to be blank. You can rename it. So I've renamed my new game button. And what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to show you how I created the actual button itself. So when you have an empty object, you literally just double click on it and it will bring up, as we showed you with our health bar, it brings up the graphics element of Construct. Okay, and then all I did was use the drawing tools and I drew a new I drew this new game shape and then use the fill tool to just fill in the background. Okay, I'm convinced that you could do this in a much more professional looking way, but this was just something I wanted to show you quite quickly how to create. Okay, so I'll just go through that section again. So with a object type, right click, add a new object type, and we want a sprite. Okay, I will insert a blank one for us now to show you what it looks like doing it from scratch. So you can then rename the sprite. So if you go over to your properties for the sprite, you'll see it's just called Sprite there. So I can rename. I can just click in there and rename that. Okay, whatever I want to call it is fine. I'm just going to call it new button for now. And you'll see there we haven't got an icon for it because we haven't created anything for it yet. So double click and then we get the blank canvas to work on in the graphics section. And that's where then we can start creating. So just using the basic graphics tools, I am just going to use the, I'm just going to use the straight line, and then I can just add my text in very easily like this. Like I said to you, I'm convinced that you'll be able to do this in a much more professional way than me, but this is just a nice quick way to set it up. Okay, use the fill tool, choose a different color, and then I can fill that in. Very, very straightforward to do that. And because this is just a button, we're not adding any extra animation or frames in, we don't need to worry about that. Once that's done, you can just close that window down and then it appears there in our objects and we can then start doing things with it. I'm just going to get rid of that one for now because we don't need that particular one. All right, so what I want to happen with my new game button, I only want that to appear once we've hit the game over stage. So whether we have reached the goal or we've lost all our health. Okay, so I'm going to initially set the button to be invisible. Now, if you remember, we looked at visibility with our game over text. So this is exactly the same principle. Okay, we have this system where we're basically, this is sort of like the start of the game. All right, so on start of layout. So at the moment, we've got two things happening there. Our animation for the health bar was already set to frame 3, but now we've added in an invisible to set the visibility to invisible, and adding an action is exactly the same as we've done previously. Add action. Now our new game button will appear here, so we can add an action to the new game button, and we just want to set the visibility to be invisible, sorry. So we can just click there and change that to invisible, and then done would add that in. Because it's already in though, I'm just going to cancel that for now. Okay, add action, new game button, set visibility to invisible. So when the game starts, that button won't be shown on the screen at all. Next thing we're going to do, we want it to show once we've hit certain criteria. So when the monster has collided or hit our goal flag, that is when we want it to appear. Okay, exactly the same process now. Add a new action, new game button, but this time we want the visibility to be visible. We want it to now appear. I'm going to cancel that because we've got it already in there. Add action, new game button, set visibility, visible. And we also want it to be visible when our health is 0. So when it's game over because we've not reached the end, but our monster's been hit by the monkey ball 3 times. Exactly the same process. Add action, new game button, set visible to set the visibility to visible. Okay. Add action, new game button, set visibility to visible. All right, so that's 3 states we've got there for our new game button. We've got it invisible when the game starts, on start of the layout. And then we want to make it visible so we can click it again when we've collided with our goal, so when we've won the game, or when we've been defeated and our health is 0. All right, remember, this is all to do with making sure that our players can quickly jump back into the next game. All right, we don't want them to see our code. We don't want them to be able to have that option to play around with our code. But equally, we don't want them spending too long out of the game either. We want to keep them interested, keep them back coming for more. And this is a quick, easy way for our players to do that. All right, we now then have to do something with this button. It's all very well having the button there, but we want it to be clicked when we play a new game. All right, so now this is a new event that we're going to put in, but there's something we need to add in before we do that event. Okay, one of the things that we set up was using the keyboard to use our keys for controlling the monster. Now, at the moment, we can use the keyboard because keyboard was set up as an object type. Okay, now I've set this up already in mind for it to work, but what you do need to do is have a mouse object type so that we can use the mouse within our game. Exactly the same process as setting up any other object. Right click on object type, add new object type, and this time we want now mouse won't appear because I've already added it in, but if you just type in mouse will appear there, and then you can insert it. Okay. Right click, add new object type, mouse, and it will appear on the list. Now, this isn't something that we are going to see in game as such, but this is an object that we're going to be using to control our game, to play our game with. We already had keyboard set up. Now we want to use the mouse as well for clicking on the start on the new game button. Once that's set up, we can add the new event. Okay, and it's a mouse event that we're going to use. The mouse is the main focus of this event. So we set up a new, and then we want to have an on click. So when the mouse button is clicked, okay, we could have it so it's our right mouse button or the middle mouse button, but we're just going to use the left mouse button for now. So when that's clicked, okay, then we can then set up the so it works with our button. Okay, so I'm just go into there. It's the same. Yeah, I'd forgotten to click the object type there. Sorry, so I'll just show you that again. So left mouse button clicked, and then the object that we want to click. And if you click on that box there, it brings up all our options. You could have in your game some mouse control for doing other things. It may be that you could destroy a monkey ball by clicking on it, or give the monster a speed boost by clicking on it. Okay, your imagination for your game is how your game will see fit. It's limited only by your imagination. Okay, so we want something to happen when we click on that new button. Okay, and what we want to happen, this is what we call a system action. This is something that affects everything, our complete system. So we want a system action, and this is a layout action. We're going to basically restart the game. So it's we restart layout. So what that will do is, because our game is only one layout at the moment, it will restart our entire game. Okay. If you had new levels, new layouts in, we've got other things there for going to different layouts, going to the next layout, going to a particular layout. But all we want to do now is to restart our layout. Again, I'm just going to cancel that because we've already got that in there. Just let me delete that one. So just to recap that bit. First thing we need to do is to add the mouse object in. Add new object type, and then click on mouse. That will add the mouse as an object that we can use within our game world. The event that we want to add is a mouse click event. Okay, so mouse on click. When we click on that, sorry, I've done that wrong yet. So when we click on the mouse, we can then click on the object that we want to click. Once we've chosen our new game button object, we can click on done. And so it reads, so when our left mouse button is clicked on the new game button, we'll restart the layout. Okay, so although there are a few things that we've added in there, I think that makes our gameplay a lot better. Let me run that game once more. And you can see, so our health bar still works, but now we just have the new game button coming up to start the game again. Okay, one other thing that I added in, you'll notice that our animation actually stops now as well. Okay, our monkey balls stop moving. All right, so that's the next thing I'm just going to show you how to include in your game. All right, and again, this comes in when the game is over. Okay, so when the monster reaches the goal or when our health is 0, that's when we want these things to happen. And this is just another couple of very simple actions on our monkey ball. So add action, monkey ball. Now this time it's to do with the movement of our monkey ball. Okay, because we set up our monkey ball to be bullet movement, bullet style movement earlier on in the properties. This section appears here on the actions. So we want to set enabled and we want it to be disabled. Okay, what that means is that just stops our monkey ball from having bullet movement. It just stops it. Okay, I'll just delete that one because it's already in. So add action to the monkey ball, set bullet, disabled. Okay, now the monkey ball has also got an animation with it as well. It's a spinning animation that it had. So we want to stop the animation as well. Exactly the same process. Add action, monkey ball, and we just want to stop in the animation section. We just want to stop. Okay, and then that stops the animation. Delete that one because we've already got that one in. And that's exactly the same too that we need to put in for when our health is 0. When the monkey ball, so when our health is 0, monkey ball, set bullet, disabled, monkey ball, stop animation. All these by adding new actions. What you'll find potentially is that when you start to develop your games and you go through some of those documents that we did yesterday, on Wednesday, before you get to the development of your game stage, the paper prototype of your game, you may well find that actually there's quite a lot of things that you want to happen on each event. So having lots of things here is absolutely fine. These are just different things that will happen when certain conditions are happening. Okay, some of them, like the keyboard, it's only one thing we want to happen. But when we win the game or when we lose the game, that's when we want multiple things to happen. All right, you can have as many actions as needed within each event. Okay, like we said earlier, with the free version, you only have 25 events. So you can see quite quickly how those events get eaten up. With a very simple one level game that we just created, we've already used 6 events. Okay, we've got the 7th one in there. That's why it's saying we've got 18 men. We've not actually put anything inside that one yet. So for our game, we've used 6 events. If you start thinking about games that are going to have multi-levels or multi-objects within those games, or multi-layouts, you'll very quickly start to use those events up. And what that may get you to do is to start thinking more creatively about your code. Okay, one thing that a good computer programmer develops is the ability to write the code in shorter numbers of lines of code, or in this case, shorter numbers of events or actions. Okay, to make their code more succinct, more compact, but still doing the same job. when you export a game, so when this game, we sort of set this game up to be a standalone game, which you can do in Construct, the more lines of code you have, the more events, the more actions that you have, the bigger that file size will be because there's more in it. With a smaller file size, that brings along a whole host of advantages, such as, you know, if your game, you're distributing a game online, then it's going to take a less time to download. If it's a cloud-based game where there's no downloading but you're just running online, then you'll still need to have access to that code to however big that file size is, and that will then, if you have quite a weak internet connection, the smaller the code, you will still be able to run your game regardless. Okay, so thinking about the number of events, or how cleverly you put these events together and the actions to go along with them, it's not just about, well, if I do this, I'm going to have to pay to use this software. It's actually it's better practice for programmers to have that, and makes your end user experience a lot better also, if that makes sense. Okay, so I've added a few extra little bits and pieces there. I'm just going to go back into my PowerPoint and recap a little what we've done so far. Just before I go into there, a question has just come in. Someone just asked, do we need to register for Construct 3 as their work doesn't save? Now, I will go back into Construct to answer that question. So at the moment, you don't need to register. As I said, if you have less than 25 events, you don't need to register, but you do need to make sure that you save it. So to save, menu, project, save as, download a copy. You can, if you have a OneDrive account or a Google Drive account, you can link that and you can cloud save your work. So obviously cloud saving has advantages, because if you go from one computer to another, your work will be readily available. Downloading a copy, unless you are saving to a network, for example, in school, you're only going to be able to access that work on one computer or one device. So if you're working on a laptop or an iPad or your phone, following through these as we do it now, then saving a copy, downloading a copy, will only download that to that device. Okay, but that should work for saving. If that doesn't work, if that's not quite working, the saving, that may be how your particular device is set up, but that should work for downloading a copy. Give your name, give your file a name, gauntlet final, and then OK, and that just saves it. Okay, you can see that mine's saved and it defaults to your downloads folder. So make sure that you are, if it is saved and you're not sure where to find it, go to your downloads folder. That should be where it is. Okay, I hope that answers that question. Yeah, so I just want to go back into the PowerPoint. Okay, so just to recap a little bit there, we watched the video of an existing game. All right, and we looked at the game comparison document, looked at some similarities and differences between the game that we had and the game that we looked at. Now, this doesn't have to be a game that's quite similar. I chose it because for my reason for doing this was to look at things that I could improve on my game to make my game better. So I wanted to look at a similar game. I could equally look at a vastly different game to see what would be different, just to get some ideas. It might be different things that you're looking at. So for example, levels, menu systems within a game, how the game loads up, is there any screens whilst the game is loading that we've talked about. So things that would go across different genres of games could be quite useful to look at. But for my particular game, what I was looking at, I wanted to look at a similar game so I could see how to improve my game, what I needed to add to make this genre of game better, my side-scrolling game. Okay, so from there I looked at different features. And again, this doesn't necessarily need to be the same kind of genre of game. Okay, lots of different games have this mechanic in there. Lots of different games have a variety of enemies in there. I could have looked at a completely different game and possibly come up with a very similar features list. Okay, we then went and modified our game based on, I just looked at this one feature, the game over, new game X section. I wanted to make my game a little easier for my gamers to get back in and continue to play. But you could then now go back and start adding in a variety of enemies, start adding in some collectibles, start making some changes to the background graphics. Okay, you wouldn't necessarily do that all in one go. You would look at maybe one feature at a time and add that into your game. Once you're happy, look at another feature, look at adding things until you are overall satisfied. I just want to quickly jump back to some of the other documents that we looked at on Wednesday. Now, if you remember, we looked at some of the paper-based documents in terms of prototyping. And one of the things that I did was to look at, I was creating a jungle racing game based on the Gigantosaurus theme. Okay, so very, very quickly, I just want to recap some of these things. So our initial ideas sheet, we looked at characters, different game mechanics, what platform, what controller, what the theme of our game was going to be. Looked at some different types of aims of the game, the different characters, how I win the game, how does the game end, and our screen planning. Looked at the main menu, character selection screen, stage 1, stage 2. Okay, and then I also wanted to look at some of the interactions. So what did the buttons do on a particular screen? So on the race, so when button A is pressed, it was accelerate. Button B, hit the brakes, select, pause menu, and the D-pad steered. I also then looked at some level progression. How am I going to keep my gamers interested? Now, from the Hunchback game that we saw right at the start, you could see there from level 1 to level 5 that we looked at, they got progressively more difficult. But it doesn't necessarily need to be about difficulty, as I've said earlier. It can just be adding extra things in to keep your gamers interested. Different collectibles, different obstacles, making different enemies appear, that kind of thing. So what I'm going to do now, I am going to very quickly have a look at an existing racing game. So I am just going to switch to, hopefully this works. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to very quickly look at perhaps the greatest racing game of all time. I'm sure some of you will disagree with me though, Mario Kart. So we have Mario Kart, and I'm just going to talk through this first gameplay, this first go through the game. Okay, so we very first of all we're faced with a super bright, colourful background there to draw us in with Mario and Peach and Bowser, and we have our first menu system: single player, multiplayer, online, wireless. So I'm just going to go into single player. I'm just going to do a quick Grand Prix, 50cc. And now we're faced with character selection. Now, one of the things I really like about the Mario Kart game is the number of characters that we have available. All obviously from different Mario games, but we kind of got all bases covered here. So we've got our stalwarts, Mario and Luigi, but then we have the princesses and different versions of Mario, different versions of the princesses, different characters from within the game, within the Mario games, but also different different Nintendo games as well, or different games on the Switch. I'm not sure that Splatoon is a Nintendo game, but it's a game that's just released on the Switch. So we have different characters from within the Nintendo world, shall we say. Okay, and what that does, that's really clever, I think, because it gets people that might not be interested in racing games, but who do, for example, like to build their towns in Animal Crossing, it gives them interest. Similarly, people who might like the Zelda games, we've got Link there, the main character from the Zelda games, and there, as I said earlier, the Splatoon games. Okay, you can also create your own me character. There's me as a me, but I'm just going to choose Mario. Okay, again, some more customization options, not just racing games, but these are quite popular. I know in games like Call of Duty, for example, you have lots of customization options to choose from, but in this case, we're just customizing our cart. That will do. Okay, and then we can get on now level selection. All right, we don't just have in Mario Kart, it isn't just a linear game, it's we go straight through. Okay, now I am aware of the time, so I am going to come back to this in session two, at the start of session 2. Sorry, start the second session later, but just very quickly, let's get straight in and have a very quick look. So again, we talked about loading screens earlier. Very different to our colourful our colourful main menu, but we do have a loading screen. Still now different loading screen, but now we're showing the track. All right, to get your gamers interested, get them not just with a egg timer type of loading screen, but we're ready to go now. Okay, and then we can, and off we go. All right, love the about Mario, different collectibles. We've got coins there. We've also got the collectible boxes to throw things at our enemies. So I've just red shelled somebody there, and different collectibles as we go through the game. Different genre, different types of level as well. Okay, this particular level is all based outside. It's like a stadium, but there are different levels, underwater levels. I think there's some levels which allow you to use your glider to fly. More collectibles there. I've now collected a banana, which I'm going to throw. Okay, there we go, a little bit of flight in this level as well. All right, so I want you to be thinking about this particular game. Like I said, we'll come back and have a look, but this again, how could I use Mario? How could I use a fantastic, well-developed game like Mario Kart to improve my game? Why would I want to do that? Okay, so that's me just about done for this session. But like I said, what we'll do, we'll jump back into Mario Kart after, and then we'll look at doing some testing, some play testing on Mario Kart, and how that will help us improve any game that we make.